as I understand it, the interpretation, I originally thought Budget Commission takes a look at a levy, determines its appropriateness, and is this the amount of money? Then it goes on to the ballot, life is good. I thought that there was a review process that you could reduce the amount of money being collected.
There is not.
That is the question.
It depends on the levy.
Fair enough.
The Budget Commission
Again, microphone
does
search
have
for-
authority to collect.
I'm sorry, it's for those who are.
We lawyers like to walk around. The Budget Commission
And
does
once we've
have,
got you on our sites, we don't want you to move, so.
Okay. The Budget Commission does have authority to reduce some levies, and they can on some of them. But there is a statute right on point that says that if it is a outside 10 mil levy that was properly approved by the voters, then the Budget Commission cannot change that levy. And it says it shall approve it each year it's submitted. So there is no authority at all for the Budget Commission to reduce not an outside 10 mil levy approved by the voters. And you've got to say that because some levies they can reduce, but not an outside millage 10 mil with approved by the voters. Excuse me, I'm having my voice is not normal. Now, there's some confusion, and I can understand why Mr. Massie has some confusion in that sometimes, is that some budget commissions in the past had reduced outside 10 mil levies improperly because the statute is right on point, says you cannot do it. But they relied on another statute that is a general statute that says that the Budget Commission can look at the appropriateness of all the levies. But this specific statute will always prevail over this general one. But we don't even have to worry about statutory interpretation. The Supreme Court of Ohio said that once the voters have properly approved an outside 10 mil levy, then that is, by law, by operation of the law, a valid levy, and it's appropriate. And the Budget Commission has no ability to change it. But I want to make another comment, if I can. The crime lab is a very important crime fighting tool for Lake County. Very important. And the way levies work, and I think Commissioner Plesnik was the one who explained it last meeting, I was told. We know levies aren't going to last forever. The levy before this one, when I went to the voters and I asked for it and the commissioners agreed and they put the levy on, the first levy, I said, I'm going to try to make this levy last 15 years. And the way you can make a levy last that long, when the income is fixed, because every year the income is fixed. When a levy brings in a certain amount of money, that's the amount of money it's going to bring in every year. So what happens is, in the early part of the levy, you do have, and you're right, it's not a profit, it's taxes. Profit has no clear. This is taxing. This is the voters said we want to be taxed for the crime lab levy. And so what you do is, what happens is you accumulate money in the early part because you're spending less, and when you go for the levy, you know you're going to accumulate. You know you're going to accumulate some money because you're going to be spending less. Your expenses aren't that high yet as to what amount of money you're bringing in. So you are going to get a surplus every year. But as your expenses go up, pretty soon, you know, if you're bringing in this flat line and your expenses keep going up, and they all do, always go up, pretty soon your expenses are then going to equal your income. And then what's going to happen is your expenses are going to exceed your income. And then you're going to be using that surplus up. And that surplus will disappear. And eventually that levy will not produce enough money to operate. I told the voters again this second time that this levy should last 15 years. And the last time I was able to make it last 20 years. Through frugal spending, through good fiscal management of the crime lab, we were able to make it last 20 years before we had to go back to the voters. And my goal is, and somebody said earlier today, I'm not going to be around forever. I certainly probably won't be around for 20 years, but my goal is, as long as I'm still here and managing those funds, we are going to be very frugal in our spending of the crime lab monies, and hopefully it will last good 15 years, and maybe with luck it will last a few years longer. But here's some things you have to think about. And it's not just, oh, you're bringing in $1 million a year more than you're spending. You've got to have secure financing for the crime lab. The crime lab is nothing but a building and a lot of fancy, really neat machinery. But the real important part of the crime lab are its people. And it's the scientists that mean everything. And the only way, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier today, the only way you can hire good scientists and keep them and attract them to the Lake County Crime Laboratory is if they know that the funding for the laboratory is secure. If they know it's secure, then they'll want to get a job there. And they'll want to work there, and they'll want to spend a career there. And we have had some people spend their careers at the Lake County Crime Laboratory. And we have some nationally known scientists at the crime lab because we have always had secure funding. And so you have to plan. It's a matter of planning. You've got to plan. When you plan your levies, you have to know that you're going to, in the early years, collect more than you spend. In the later years, you're going to spend more than you're collecting. And so when you're managing a crime lab, you've got to think of all of those things, not just looking at the bottom line of how much money we're collecting now and how much we're spending, because the spending changes all the time. It's a matter of, you have to make sure you're doing good fiscal management every year, all the time, to try to make that levy last. And so that's just comments.
Rebuttal to that?
Oh, go ahead.
I can understand what Prosecutor Coulson is saying. Let's take a look at it from the standpoint of the average citizen. You got the crime lab taking money out of the community. You've got Deepwood Center that's got $55 million sitting in reserves. You got an Adams board that's probably got $5-6 million in rainy day funds. We cannot continue to suck the lifeblood out of the community through these property taxes. I'd like to see the crime lab come back every 5 years, not a continuous levy. They've got to continue to prove to the taxpayers that they're doing the job. And not just to sit back and say, well, we've got it for forever. I've got to make I'm trying to advocate for these seniors in here that are going to start losing their homes. No question about it. We stay on this path of ever-increasing property taxes, and we're going to price seniors and those on fixed incomes out of their home. Now, if a scientist doesn't want to join the crime lab because he can't be sure that he's going to be paid, that's his problem. I'm looking out for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Fair enough, and if I could continue on the discussion using crime lab or Adams board as examples. The budget commission, it sounds like there are statutory want to say guardrails, limitations as to what they can do. We've heard discussions from other commissioners in other counties about how their budget commissions have reduced levy collections. As Commissioner Pleshnik pointed out, when we're doing our jobs, we drill down in things, we get into stuff. One of our jobs is to ask these difficult questions. And I'm sure there's going to be people out there with getting their hackles up, or wait a minute, why are you talking about my levy? But this is a matter subject to fair debate, and it doesn't sound like this is debatable. The law is the law. Is there something that you could point to us, that you could give us some kind of a memo? I know in all your spare time.
Well, I've given the Budget Commission a number of memos, so yes, I can give you a memo.
Okay, that would be very helpful, because if we could put that to rest, and the answer was yes for those who could not hear. That's okay, if you don't mind, so.
Yeah. No, sure. I've given the Budget Commission a memo on that, and I can. We'll get you a copy. We'll get the commissioners a copy of the memo. It's just basically law. But we do have to. I'm only talking about the crime lab here, but
Sure.
the crime lab is law enforcement. That is the priority for government. Law enforcement, protecting the citizens, and so it's a arm for protecting the citizens. And unfortunately, all law enforcement costs money. And there's just no way around it. And I empathize, when I pay my tax bills, I empathize with what is being said here about the levies. And I see levies that I question, but not law enforcement levies. This is really important, and because we have this crime lab, we solve crimes in Lake County that would go unsolved, it's really important, especially as the state labs keep getting more and more backlogged and have more and more to do. Having our own crime lab is really important. So the voters did, and then we live in a democracy, the voters did say they wanted this levy. It is for law enforcement. You can't get a better, in my opinion, that's my personal opinion, you can't get a better reason than law enforcement. And the Budget Commission has no authority. The law doesn't allow it.